to the February 10th Public Safety Committee meeting. Today we are taking up the FY21 Savings Plan Round 2, as it's called. And there are 7 different topics that we'll be dealing with. We're dealing with 4 different people who have worked on every one of these topics, and we thank them for doing such a good job in the packet. We do have a few scheduled changes. We've been asked because Dr. Stoddard from Emergency Management and Homeland Security has a scheduling conflict, if he can go first. We've also been asked for the state's attorney, John McCarthy, if he could go after that, but he, at this point, is not logged on, so we'll play that by ear. So with that, Ms. Deputy Director Howard, if you will please lead us through the Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security packet, please.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Katz. And the Office of Emergency Management Homeland Security savings plan information is on page 3 of the staff report. It's item number 4 in our list of items. And because you don't get to hang out with Dr. Stoddard enough, we figured that we would bring him back for one more short piece. The
well, I think it's vice versa too. He didn't get to hang out with us enough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He asked if he could spend more time with you all, so we want to make sure we accommodate that. The savings, there's 3 savings items within OEMHS. The first 2 are relatively minor. They're operating savings related to computer equipment or other EOC equipment purchase and repair. Those total about $28,419, and the department believes that these reductions can be taken without any service impact going forward. The last of the 3 items is a $100,000 reduction in the faith-based security grants. As you recall, the council approved $700,000 for this item as part of the budget in FY21. Due to the pandemic and other associated restrictions, there have, of course, been fewer in-person religious events that have taken place, and the department does not anticipate going forward that a lot will take place, and so does not anticipate being able to use all of this funding in the current fiscal year. To date, no funding has been awarded in FY21 through those grants, and that's why they're recommending reducing the total amount by $100,000, so there would still be $600,000 remaining for that purpose. So council staff recommends approval of the reductions of $128,419 as recommended by the county executive.
Thank you. And before we turn to Dr. Stoddard, I did want to mention that we did receive a request from Councilmember Friedson that, and he was understanding of the $100,000 for the faith-based security grants, but he was suggesting that we place the $600,000 in a non-lapsing fund, so that when things do open, that this money would be available for the nonprofits to be able to access. And with that, Dr. Stoddard, did you have anything to add, please?
Thank you, Councilmember Katz, and good to see you all again. We had Councilmember Katz, we had ethics training last week together, and I don't know if you know that, but we were in there together for that as well. So
I did know that. I did.
lots of things together. So So with the savings plan covering the first 2 pieces that Deputy Director Howard mentioned, the cost for the EOC, obviously we can make savings there because we're doing most of our EOC activities remotely. Even when we've had inauguration activities, we had a much lighter footprint in the EOC, and we'll continue to do so in reflection of the protections that we're putting in place for COVID-19. And so we believe we can make those savings this year. This is one of those things where the pandemic has cost us less to do those things in person than they normally would, and therefore we think we can save money in that area. On the faith-based grants, obviously, we know that the requirements of COVID have limited in-person gatherings and the size of gatherings, and that has been true both in our secular and our non-secular environments. And so we're expecting that those limitations for our houses of worship, and frankly, many of them have been things that they've taken on themselves and doing remote worship and things like that, have lessened the security burden in terms of number of facilities doing in-person activities and the size of those activities. So we believe that this savings plan will correctly reflects that there's still a security risk for those events that are held in person, but there's just less of them and less numbers.
Thank you. Either one of my colleagues on the committee, do you have any comments? Council Vice President Albornoz.
Not sure if it's the appropriate time, but I support Councilmember Friedson's proposal. I think it does make sense. There was a shooting just this morning at a health clinic in Minnesota, and we have seen a substantial rise in hate crimes, certainly over the last 4 years. And while obviously it's true that things are on hold right now as it relates to gatherings, things are going to alleviate rather quickly. And I'm very concerned, particularly around mental health issues, what transpired in the Capitol, and the rise in white supremacy, that we must stay in front of this issue. We must stay strong on this issue. And yes, clearly we would want to save every dollar we can. But I think even the 100,000 as a modest investment to ensure we have the infrastructure in place and are ready to roll as things begin to open, I think is really important right now. And we shouldn't lose sight of that, because the worst thing we would all want is to, God forbid, something happen and know that we didn't do everything we could to prevent it. So on that particular item, I think we need to stay firm, Mr. Chairman. That's my opinion.
So I understand you're saying that we should not reduce it by the 100,000 either. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay. Council President Hucker, please.
I mean, I agree with everything that Gabe has said. I'm wondering if there's any, so are we not taking the cut, or are we putting it in a non-lapsing account so it can be restored when gatherings reopen?
So just in terms of the procedural issues, right now the decision before you is whether to take the $100,000 cut or not.
Mm-hmm.
And then separate from that, council staff would work with executive branch staff on what the appropriate mechanism would be to take the remaining money, whether it's $600,000 or $700,000, and make sure it's available going forward.
Okay.
I'm very comfortable with that. Yeah.
That's fine with me. I was just going to ask, since so much of this, I believe, and it was a result of a response to both actual crimes that were out there and also just local threats and chatter that our public safety officials had picked up. I'm wondering if there's any update on what the levels are like lately. I don't know if you know,
I haven't.
So,
yeah, I know. Yeah, I haven't gotten a specific update on any sort of change in the national chatter. I know that, for example, we've seen an uptick in crimes against Asian Americans and others, not necessarily specifically related to houses of worship, but certainly across the country in recent weeks. And so we do routinely get updates, but I don't know the national level metrics. I have not seen them. I've not seen any changes or been made aware of any changes. I know that the law enforcement partners are on the call for their next part, so I know it's not their time, but if they have any additional feedback on this issue, I'd be happy to hear it.
If I could just jump in really, because Chairman Katz and I participated in a panel discussion just 2 weeks ago regarding some of the hate crimes specifically within our Jewish community. Yep. And the stark rise that people are seeing. I was just blown away and alarmed by what was discussed during that session. There is a significant percentage of people within our Jewish faith, as an example, who are choosing not to wear jewelry that recognizes their faith. And obviously because of what happened in Pittsburgh over a year ago, but because of what's transpired since. So that's why it's just very much, I know, on the forefront of all of our minds.
Absolutely. And as you very well know, these types of horrible concerns happen very quickly. And so we do need to have funding available so that we can be of assistance whenever we can be. So if it is okay with go ahead, Dr. Stoddard.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I just want to be clear about the change that I was talking about. It was really since you passed this originally back in last year. I'm not aware of any major changes, but Council Vice President Albornoz is absolutely correct. There has been an increase and hate crimes against religious institutions was what drove the executive and the council to work together to develop this fund. Those conditions still 100% exist. I was just referring to the point. I don't think there's been, I'm not aware of any major changes from when we talked about this last year in the risks posed to facilities. I think it is still high, and I think it's still consistently high.
Thank you. So if it meets with the council, with the committee's approval, Mr. Howard, we are going to not cut the 100,000, and then we want to work with the, as you termed it earlier, with the county executive to put the 700,000 in a non-lapsing fund.
Not a problem. We can work with the executive branch on what the correct mechanism would be to do that. It may be an action that you would take as part of the FY22 budget, but we will circle back with you on what the appropriate way to handle that would be, regardless of the amount.
Okay. So did one of my
if I may, I think it would be very important for us to know if we're going to do that, because obviously if we're not going to do that, we would have to expedite the spending versus, I think just making sure in terms of if we're going to collectively do that, I think that's a fine idea. But obviously from an operational perspective, we would just need to know that we're going to do that in enough time where we don't rush to spend the money now and there is no need for a lapsing fund. I think we would prefer to do it over a lapsing fund, because I think it is correctly assessed that the risks today will be different from those in 3 months or 4 months or 6 months when we open things back up. So it's just, we will need to know in enough time to be able to shift the way we would operate.
Okay. And Mr. Howard shook his head yes, so we're aware of it. Councilmember Albernaz, did you want to make a motion? And
I'd like to move that we retain the 100,000 and add it to the lapse as proposed by Councilmember Friedson in his memo to all of us.
Thank you. Council President Hucker seconds it. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Yes, Councilmember Hucker, we knew that you were going to raise your hand. Thank you very much. Next, we're going to hear from the state's attorney, Ms. Farag, and it's number 7 on our listing here today, and then we'll get back to the numbers as they exist. But Ms. Farag, would you like to lead us through this, please, and then we'll hear from the state's attorney.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. As you mentioned, this is number 7 on the list, and that's in page 5 of the staff report. The recommended cut to the state's attorney's office is about $68,000. That would keep 3 vacant contractual assistant state's attorney positions unfilled for the remainder of the year. This is related to COVID-related closures and delays and social distancing requirements in the courts, and it has impacted caseload at this point. And the state's attorney's office believes that they can make it through to the end of FY21, not filling these positions. However, I just wanted to make the committee aware that when normal operations resume, it is likely that the committee will have to reconsider whether or not we can fill those positions moving into FY22. So I'm recommending the reduction as recommended by the county executive.
Thank you. And I'm in agreement that when things change, we're going to have to truly look at this again. Mr. State's Attorney, did you have anything to add? You're on mute, John. John, you're on mute. There we go.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was with you all last night at the reimagining meeting. Mr. Councilman Katz, I think this is 3 days in a row that I've been together with you. So in any instance, it's an honor to be with you. I think this committee is where a lot of the action, especially based on what we heard last night, is where a lot of the action in the upcoming council session is going to happen. I will tell you, could I just address, I was listening to some of the questions you were asking me previously. Let me tell you, one of the things I will tell you in terms of hate crimes, this is one of the proudest things that's occurred during the time that I've been state's attorney. The Anti-Defamation League created something called the Shield Award to recognize local prosecutors' offices in the country that fought against hate crimes in their community. The first time they ever awarded the Shield Award in the entire country, the Anti-Defamation League gave it to my office. Wow. We didn't win it the second year, but we won it the third year again nationally. Now that in their wisdom, they've now shared it with others across the country. But I would say I'm very proud of the fact that my office received 2 out of the first 3 years the Anti-Defamation League gave this award. We received it. In terms of hate crimes or white supremacist groups. We did have a death that occurred in this county last year, a young man by the name of Duncan Lemp. I don't know if you're following that particular case. I will tell you the FBI is monitoring chatter by white supremacist groups. Mr. Lemp was reportedly involved with the 3 Percenters. On the anniversary of his death, which is coming up in March, there are some planned protests that could come to our county. They are clearly going to be protesting in Howard County, but some of the intelligence suggests they might come to Montgomery County as well. So, Councilman Albernas, in response to maybe one of your observations, I share that with you. And again, one of the things we should be, our numbers are really crazy right now. I agree completely with what Susan said. I don't have a word to add to her, but there has been an alarming uptick, and I know you both know this, in homicides and carjackings in Montgomery County. We're up already at 9 in murders, which equals the total year total that we had 2 years ago in 5 weeks. And carjackings probably number over 20 now. Vast majority of people have been arrested, but those are 2 disturbing trends that we are currently in the process of addressing. Thank you very much. I don't have anything to add to what Susan said. I would hope with those upticks, and Susan said this, once the courts open again in April, that's when the rubbers can hit the road. Councilman Katz, I think you understand that. You said that in your comments. Thank you very much for letting me rule with you today. I'll take any questions if anybody's got it.
Thank you. Do you have any questions of Council President?
We're so rarely honored with the state's attorney's presence. I don't want to miss the opportunity. What do you think are the contributing factors to the rise in crime that you're mentioning? What can we do about it? And among is our staffing levels for our police or any of their procedures or policies having anything to do with it at all?
Well,
I know we heard earlier that there was a diminution in traffic enforcement, for example. I don't know if there's other things like that contributing. Go ahead.
Councilman Hooker, let me say this. I think that as you look at each individual homicide, there is no pattern here. I'm not here to say that they seem to be consistently gang related. They do not. We have a gang homicide, but that's not the pattern. Have we had domestics? Yes. Have we had shootings that involve the police? As recently as Sunday, we had a case that we have to get involved in that counts as a homicide up in the Olney area, which with a man who appears to have been mentally ill again, a theme that all of us see all too often in these kinds of scenarios. But there is not a pattern. So I don't think that there's not a simple answer. Have we had a drug deal gone bad that ended in a homicide? Yes. Have we had a police shooting? Yes. Have we had a gang related homicide? Yes. Have we had domestics? Yes. So we also had a false confession to a double homicide in Silver Spring.
Wow.
We had a 29-year-old man. The police found in a welfare check 2 women dead in a house in Silver Spring.
Mm-hmm. I'm familiar.
When they checked for the welfare of the women, the son of one of the women dead in the house walked up and confessed to murdering them both. Rather than place him under arrest, they began to investigate what was happening there.
Mm-hmm.
He was a mentally ill man.
Yep.
They both died of COVID. He said he had killed them. There were no injuries to the body. He falsely confessed because he was a mentally ill, desperate man who wanted to be put in a state hospital because he could not live alone on the street. I'm going to tell you, it's a great story about collaboration between police, mental health partners, and the state's attorney's office not to charge a guy with double homicide who falsely confessed to murdering his mother and his grandmother about 7 days ago here in the county.
Right.
So I just want to, we're always talking about collaborating and working together on these mental health issues. We have a really good example of getting a great result just recently here in the county. But again, I think most of the arrests and the carjacking, most of the cases have ended in arrest. One of the disturbing trends, as I have been briefed, is the youthful age of many of the offenders in the carjackings. Some of the carjackers are as young as 14,
Mm-hmm.
and they are violent. And most of the carjackings that have occurred in Chevy Chase, Bethesda, Most of them are up in that region. Not that they're exclusively up there, but they have been violent, and the offenders in many instances are juveniles. So if there's a trend, it's a juvenile trend relative to the carjacking.
I know you said there's no trend, but is there, how, to what extent is, there's a perception out there certainly that COVID is a factor contributing to increased stress, anxiety.
I think that, Mr. Hooker, I think there absolutely is, and I think particularly in the domestic, I think that's absolutely true.
Right.
I think in the situation that took place on Sunday, I think COVID and depression and isolation played a part in that. So I think some of them do have an overlap with COVID, and that probably plays itself out more regularly in an area I think that maybe Councilman Albornoz talked about, domestic violence. Right. We see it again and again in the area of domestic violence. And we are very concerned about that.
You keep saying that it happened on Sunday. I believe it happened on Saturday.
I apologize if I got my weekend days.
Yeah, but it was Saturday.
Up, and I accept that friendly amendment to what I just said.
They all blend together.
Yeah.
But more victims at home, more hours with their abusers, right?
I think there's no question that is true, and there's depression, isolation. I think all of those are component parts in what is playing itself out on the streets. I think, Mr. Hooker, I think you're right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Vice President.
Well, to follow up on this, I mean, it's obviously sobering information. The carjacking, I live in Kensington, not far from Connecticut Avenue and Chevy Chase, and several of those carjackings have happened in that corridor, brazen with, as the state's attorney has said, teenagers, young teenagers that were involved in several of those incidences. So I'd like to suggest, Mr. Chairman, that we propose a joint public safety and HHS work session specifically to talk about, because we have seen in HHS there is a huge spike in the calls to the crisis intervention line within the county. And I think you can draw a straight line between the crisis that families find themselves in and what we're seeing. So, and it is going to take a systemic approach. And as the state's attorney said, the great news is that we have a strong foundation from which to work from, because there has been a spirit of collaboration now for years that works and works well. But clearly we need to think about that also within the context of FY22 and the potential reductions that are looming to make sure we're not cutting off our nose to spite our face, because we have to keep that infrastructure strong and holistic and across the board. And on as lighter note as it possibly can be, John, you're a spitting evidence for Kenny Rogers, man. Like it's like every time I see you these days.
I've had less flattering comments made.
Yeah,
so
I always think you got to know when to hold them and when to fold them.
Well, John doesn't hold
around anymore.
Well, anyhow, we have got to get back on track for the savings plan.
Mr. Chairman, we can work on scheduling that joint session, which I think will be critical and timely, given everything.
I absolutely agree.
The police do have a task force on and I'm sure you're aware of this, they do have a task force that's already been formed to work on the carjacking issue. So obviously our partners from law enforcement should be included in that.
Okay. Thank you very much. We will invite Mr. Rogers to be with us as well when we have that meeting. And so, thank you. So,
thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. State's Attorney. So, if it's all right with my committee members, this will be without objection for the $68,265 reduction. Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, we are going to get back on track, and we're going to now turn to number 1, which is animal services, and Carlos Camacho is going to be leading us through that. Please.
Good morning, council members. So I'll be addressing the recommended reductions to the Office of Animal Services that were included in the County Executive's Round 2 Savings Plan. The explanation of the reduction is on page 2 of your packet. So the County Executive is recommending a reduction of $150,000 for the Office of Animal Services in the form of a hiring deferral or lapse planning savings. This represents a 2% reduction in their original FY21 approved appropriation of around $7.75 million. OAS plans to achieve this reduction based on current vacancies and projected turnover The majority of these savings are achieved through maintaining the vacancy of a shelter operations manager. OAS would still like to hire this position in the future because they would like to relieve some supervisory responsibility from the deputy director. So while they would like to hire this position, they understand the fiscal position that the county is in, and the service impact related to this reduction is likely to be minimal. So council staff recommends going forward with this recommendation. But if you have any questions, I know OAS staff is on this call. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Koenig, I see you were here. Did you have any comments?
Yeah, I just want to just basically address the savings plan. Obviously, we're not just looking at the savings with the personnel side of it. We're also looking on the operation side and making sure that it's some combination of that. It's a brand new budget. We inherited it. We switched it over from the police department, kind of inherited it over, became an independent agency, as everybody knows. And so trying to work through this budget. But the budget staff have been great. We found a great kind of place where we have flexibility and how we achieve the 155,000. So, and it looks like we're on a pretty good course for that. So
150,000. Yeah.
150.
Council Vice President Albernauz.
I'll be brief. I will reluctantly accept this reduction. I had the great opportunity, thanks to Mr. Koenig, of getting a tour of our animal shelter just a couple of months ago. Full disclosure, I fell in love with the dog that was there, but got overruled by my wife when I got home. But working on that. But I also just want to acknowledge the great work that they've done. There has been a significant increase in interest in adoption through COVID. And the shelter has done a fantastic job, and the entire animal services team. So, Mr. Koenig, kudos to you and your team for what you are doing.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And it is reluctant that but I believe it will be without objection. Is that correct? Thank you. It is approved without objection.
Kudos for their hard work, though.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Next is the Office of Consumer Protection. And Naya is going to be leading us through that, please.
Yes, good morning, committee members. This is the executive is proposing a reduction by lapsing a currently vacant position for an additional 6 months for FY21. This position was initially lapsed as part of the round one savings plan that the council approved this past summer. The position has actually been vacant since January of last year, 2020. And council staff does not see any issues with continuing the lapse and recommends as submitted. Director Friedman is available for any further questions as needed.
Thank you. Mr. Friedman, did you have anything in addition, please?
Well, thank you, committee members. We were actually going to file a complaint about the FY21 savings plan, but then we realized that we are actually the agency that resolves complaints. So. So we decided that we had to dig in and figure out a way to do just that. And so, yes, reluctantly, we've been able to lapse a position. We lost our automotive expert due to retirement. We were going to lapse the position for 6 months, but we'll go ahead and do the best we can to continue to work on those complaints and continue to lapse that position. Samuel Buo, who's works with our budget, and we will continue to do that. Although this is actually the first budget season that we've worked with you without Susan Farag. So we want to make sure that everyone knows how much great work she's done for us. And we anticipate working with Council Vice President Gabe Albanez on COVID-19 related scams that we're facing. There's certainly been an uptick in those, many new scams since the pandemic has been with us. So we will do the best we can in spite of the savings plan.
And we appreciate that. And we have said time and time again, Eric, and we mean this sincerely, your department has been hit so very, very hard and does such great work that once we can finally see ourselves with a few dollars, then we really have to come back and do the right thing for Office of Consumer Protection. And I don't blame you for not filing a complaint. That would mean you had that much more workload. So why would you want to do that? So, but unless any of my colleagues have comment, Councilmember Albernauz.
I'll just say quickly, I appreciate you bringing that up, Eric. We are going to be working collaboratively because there have been a tremendous amount of vaccines that have popped up because of scams that have popped up because of vaccine issues, and just it's a very difficult environment and confusing and disorienting. I do think we should explore, Susan. I know that I'd like to see if we can partner with the state and see if there may be opportunities moving forward, so that we can identify additional funding sources, because I know that there are federal and state funds that sometime become available, which obviously doesn't necessarily address personnel issues, because we can't count on those funds in perpetuity. But I'd like to see if there are other potential funding sources in the short term that we may be able to draw from to help the Office of Consumer Protection, because this has become a huge issue, and I think there may be some federal dollars available.
Okay. And that was to NIAM as well. And unless there is, all of a sudden, something came up on my computer. I don't know. Unless there is any objection, we're going to approve this without objection. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you very much. Next is corrections and rehabilitation, and that is Ms. Farag, please.
Yes, for correction and rehabilitation is on pages 2 and 3 of your staff report, and I do see Director Talley is here. The proposed reductions total $1.2 million, and they're both COVID related. The impact of COVID on operations for the department. The first one's reflecting the continued lapse of the alternative community services work crew for savings of $53,000. This crew has not been active since the COVID-19 health restrictions had been put in place last year. And the second one is related to the closure of pre-release and re-entry services facility for savings of about $1.2 million. They will continue to lapse positions that they normally would have to fill. And again, I just wanted to emphasize that when life goes back to normal, both of these are things that the committee will have to explore as far as restoring in FY22. But at this point, council staff's not recommending any changes.
Thank you. Director Talley, did you have anything in addition?
Sure. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President. Nice to see you again. I was on the call last night, and so I heard your comments last night. Yes, so closing PRC was something that we had to do, as you know, because of the community spread of the virus, and we could not, have a community work release program operating during this pandemic. And so we are doing the fiscally responsible thing of deploying our case managers and resident supervisors to help out in services at detention services that have grown because of the fact that we're into a lot of court remote hearings where our case managers are doing new responsibilities. Our pretrial supervision caseload has grown by 200 as more people have been released from the jail. So we have deployed staff to where they're needed. And so we're fortunate to have like positions that can transfer without any interruptions in class or salaries because they are interchangeable based on their responsibilities aligning closely. We wish the pre-release center could be open because we all understand the significance of that to reentry and helping people reenter in the community with a chance with employment, housing, and everything else. And so we're looking to the summer to be able to reestablish that program based on what the community numbers look like. Until that time, PRC is undertaking significant ADA renovations during the time that is empty to 2 of their housing units, their medical suite. And so things are happening at that facility while we have it empty that we wouldn't probably be able to do as efficiently as we're doing right now. And so we believe that this is the best, that we could put on the table at this time. And so I'm open to any questions that you may have.
Thank you, and thank you for all that you do. Is there any questions of Director Talley? If not, we're going to approve this without objection. Thank you very much. We're going to approve this without objection. Thank you, Director Talley, for all that you do every day. Next, we're going to go to number 5, which is fire and rescue, and that is also Ms. Farag.
Yes, and this is on page 4 of your staff report. The executive's recommending one reduction of $1.2 million, and that is reducing the recruit class, the current one, which I believe already started, from 57 to 37 recruits. This is the same proposal that you looked at in the first savings plan last summer, but it was rejected by council because of the potentially adverse impact on cost overruns for overtime that the department does experience. However, At this point, fire and rescue is not able to really accommodate more than those 37 recruits due to COVID-19, social distancing, and other public health restrictions. Again, this will likely have an impact on staffing and overtime moving into FY22, and that's something the committee's been interested in for several years and something that we can bring back for discussion closer to FY22 as we move through the budget process. But at this point, I'm recommending approval as submitted.
Thank you, Chief Goldstein. It's good to see you. Did you have any additional comments?
Susan outlined it very well, and I very much appreciate the support for the positions at the beginning of the 21 budget. And as we got back into the swing of things in July and the August timeframe, staff recognized that with the police academy in session now, they started about 2 weeks before fire academy did. The fire academy started on February the 1st, that with safety limitations in place and the need to focus on the safe education environment, that the class needed to be limited to those 40 personnel. We could not start the class any earlier than the early February timeframe. So it's not like we could try to do 2 smaller classes or 2 quicker classes and achieve the same number of folks. So the class started on February 1st. And the impact, as Susan outlined, and we've been working with OMB and discussing 22 and beyond, is the increase in overtime and the attrition chart challenges because of the delta between 57 and 37. But I appreciate the support, and we are discussing how to achieve, FY22 training classes with what we don't know will be the health environment going forward. Planning for potentially 2 smaller classes next year as an example, so that we can achieve higher numbers than 40, higher numbers than 37 in a COVID continued environment, if that was the case.
Thank you. Any questions of the chief? Thank you, Chief. We're going to accept this without objection. Thank you. And good seeing you as always. Thanks.
Thank you.
And the last for the listing of today is the police department. And Ms. Frog, you have that one as well.
The recommended reductions here total about $5 million, and they have 3 recommended changes. The first one is to reduce the winter recruit class from 22 to 14 for savings of approximately $462,000. Staffing's been an ongoing issue, and recruiting has been an ongoing issue, and this class size of 22 was already small. So a reduction to 14, again, is something for the committee to keep an eye out on. And again, we're going to have that staffing update on the 25th for the police department before the committee. The committee will, as I stated, they'll look at that on February 25th to determine what retention and recruitment needs are. At this point, though, I'm recommending that this cut be taken just due to the savings impact that we need to achieve at this point, and the committee can keep looking at staffing as we move forward. The second reduction is reducing overtime for $1.75 million, and that reduction reflects reduced court-related overtime, again, because of COVID-19 public health restrictions on the courts at this point. The third one is reducing operating expenses for $2.8 million, which is a large sum, which I had some concern about initially. It does reflect COVID-19 related reductions, such as lower motor pool expenditures. They're using yet less fuel, and they have less maintenance and repair costs on vehicles. And it also reflects their suspended travel and training. I'm recommending approval of all 3 as submitted.
Thank you. We're pleased to have Chief Jones with us. Chief, did you have anything in addition to add, please?
Good morning. No, I think, first of all, I think Susan did a phenomenal job of explaining our reductions. And I'll just speak briefly just to the overtime costs, of course, with reduction in court, which is a large expenditure of our overtime costs. This will not have a major impact on our operations, and as well as when we talk about our lower motor pool expenditures, due to the fact that we have a portion of our department that has been tasked with teleworking, with many of their functions, and that has reduced the number of vehicles that are actually out on our roadways and travel. And as we have already done so with our recruit class, we have already began that class that began a couple of weeks ago, and currently we did just place 14 in to begin the cost savings already in place. So.
Thank you, Council Vice President Obernoz.
Thank you very much. Just a couple quick questions. We've been hearing through the grapevine that there are a number of officers eligible for retirement, but have chosen not to retire yet, but maybe once there is an adjustment to the differential pay, as an example, or maybe other adjustments that come later on down the line. Being an old department head, I used to keep a running tally of the percentage of employees who were eligible for retirement. I use that in my planning of operations in a variety of ways. Do you guys, how are you managing that? I'm concerned that obviously with the reduction, with the classes being smaller for a variety of reasons, as we all know, given the environment that we're in right now, coupled with potentially a significant percentage of officers who are going to retire in the next few months, I am concerned about that equilibrium. And obviously that does then translate to budget issues. So if you guys could talk a little bit about that, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, I mean, one of the major concerns that we have is we do have a portion of our complement of sworn officers who have entered the 25-year range and are eligible for retirement. One of the bonuses that we do have is the deferred retirement program, which is a 3-year program that officers can elect to actually go into. Now, the question will become, each individual officer has their own view about whether or not they want to remain, enter that program in retirement and remain on the job for an additional 3 years. We do keep a running tab of those numbers of those officers that are eligible for retirement. We also have a forecast of what is forecasted. For example, those officers who are in a drop program who we know will be leaving at a specific time. That gives us some idea of what that will look like. What it does not give us in actuality is when any individual who is eligible to retire decides to retire unexpectedly, you may say. That is, we have seen that over the past few months, where we have seen a few of our officers who we did not anticipate to retire, who have retired for a variety of reasons. And we also have officers that have actually retired a little bit earlier than their anticipated retirement dates that they're actually eligible for. So, it's something that we are continuing to monitor. I am not hitting the panic button just yet. As I have stated, one of the most important things for us to do is to try to keep the morale of our officers up right now. And I will tell you, I will not put sugar on it. That's a challenge for us right now, based upon lots of what's going on in our community. So with that being said, we know that we are talking to officers, but there's a lot of frustration amongst the rank and file. But that's something that we're going to have to continuously monitor. Clearly, we are at the end of this fiscal year, we will be lower in our complement based upon the number of officers, based upon the previous savings that we had in this fiscal year. So we'll continuously monitor. And again, we don't know what FY22 is going to bring. So we're going to have to be prepared to address that accordingly.
And then my final just comment for now is, Chief, this is the first time we've seen you since the passing of Blanca King formally testifying before the body. Obviously, yes. All of us, just our heart pours out to you and your team. Blanca was such a leader and such a remarkable person. And I also know leaves a huge void in terms Absolutely. Of, because she had such an incredible role, such an important role in building bridges within communities that won't easily be replaced by any one person. And as we know, community partnerships are more important than they ever have been before between our law enforcement team and the community. So I will be looking for, and I think there are even some recommendations in the Reimagining Police report that we saw last night and discussed that talk more openly about creating those more meaningful opportunities. So, we're doing this conversation within the context of a savings plan, but that's an investment that I know everyone agrees we need to be making more of. So, looking for solutions there moving forward.
Yeah, and in fact, I will just make a note. I mean, I think I shared with this group about my reorganizational plan that I presented to the county executive. I am still waiting for the final authority to move forward with that plan. But a part of that plan had to do a revamping in our public information office, which we are currently hiring a civilian to actually lead that office. That's actually in motion. But Blanca's position will also be, we will be posting that position in the very near future in order to have that liaison with our Latino community, as we have done particularly over the past, 20 plus years with Blanca's service. So she's very, as we all know, she's going to be very difficult to replace, but we do have, that is a need that is out there and that I have on the top of my agenda to handle.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Chief. I defer back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Council President Hucker.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Chief, thanks for coming in, and AC Patel as well. Can I just pour down on, you mentioned morale. Can you talk about the chief drivers of that and how they balance out? I know I've talked to you and individual officers about, their sense of criticism, that they've received from some of us, from some members of the community. The issue of pay and pay comparison to other jurisdictions has come up a fair amount, and how we anyway, I don't want to be too prescriptive. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what are the top 2 or 3 biggest drivers of lower morale and how it compares to the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, so I will say I have to be honest with you, Council President Hucker. I mean, over the past year plus, this department has been under constant scrutiny in many facets. And, not that we don't want to open up the doors and be accountable, be transparent. That is not the case. There have been allegations by many in the community that I don't believe necessarily all the facts are on the table. And police officers are feeling that. They're feeling as if they are made out to be some demons in our society, the unnecessary evil that, for those who put the uniform on every day to come to work, and they just don't feel as if that the community is giving them their worth for what they do to keep this community as safe as it is. I mean, we have our problems, but if you look at us comparatively in just this region, you will see one of the most safest communities in the Washington metropolitan area. Mm-hmm. But yet we don't get, there's no acknowledgement of that fact for the officers that are out here. There's the acknowledgement that we are the very opposite. And so that is the driving force. I hear from many of our officers. I get it via email, I get phone calls, I get texts about their disenchantment to such that is a frustration that many are deciding maybe they will be leaving prior to their expected retirement date. And so, one of my biggest challenges in the leadership of this police department with my senior executive staff has been to try to make sure that we are keeping their heads up from a standpoint of keeping driving to try to help them with their morale issues. I told them, when I first took over as chief of police, changes were going to be coming, and that the community was going to be demanding changes. But I think that they didn't see some of these criticisms that the way they see it, from being accused of being racist, that takes away for what they signed up for. I think that is a driving force that I just won't put sugar on it. I'm going to be very frank with this community about the way my officers are feeling, because they don't have a voice otherwise, because nobody's been out in front speaking on this very issue. So it's now time for me to have to do that, to make sure that they understand that we are acknowledging the fact that their morale is low. But I would say that's the number one. When we talk about pay, again, I know that's when we look at what happened last year with the union contract, I mean, that's just comparable to, to basically their morale issues about, again, what is their worth. Understanding that, okay, I'm sure those understand about financial situations that the county government is in. And at the end of the day, I know there's discussion currently about differential pay and beyond, but that always is an underlying force, right? When we look at how people are acknowledged in their worth. And there are some issues there as well. So I would say those are the top two.
Thank you. How would you say morale currently compares to over the last 10 years?
Well, we've had ups and downs. I mean, I've seen, again, having been here for, the past 35 years,
right.
I've seen us go up and down. I mean, I remember probably around, there were some similar issues, maybe not to this degree, but I would say this is probably, for longevity, this is probably the worst I've seen it in a while. But I would say probably when we looked at around the early 2010 to 2012 range, there were some issues, but I think we're able to recover from that, and officers have they kind of persevered in many ways. So now the question is, how do we sort of continue to meet the challenges that we are faced with? Right. Again, we're committed to some changes. There's lots of discussion still going on about changes in police and reimagining. I mean, we talk about reimagining public safety. Clearly, that was centered all around the police department when we talked about public safety. So it was really about reimagining policing. So they recognize that there's lots of discussion. I literally had to put out a video last Friday after the report was released in order to help maintain, because they had lots of questions, lots of frustrations, because they just didn't understand a lot of what was in the report. When you talk about things such as eliminating 50% of officers in 2 districts, 2 of the busiest districts, in fact, the 2 busiest districts in the county. And when we talk about community engagement, and community policing, it does matter that you're actually interacting with your community. And when you tell us that we shouldn't be interacting with our students with the SRO program, or we shouldn't be interacting with people on the streets of Silver Spring, then you're telling us we should be community policing in some regards. So they're confused at what does that mean, right? And so we have to figure out ways to help them understand what the community is demanding of us in a clear and concise message, in order to be very effective, to make sure, again, that we're helping them understand where these changes need to come from and where are we going. So are these recommendations that are going to be implemented, how they're going to be implemented? There are lots of questions that remain. So we have a lot of work to do.
If I could interrupt, I think we need to have a committee meeting on this, and if it's a joint committee meeting as well, on this very, very topic. But I think we need to get back to the topic at hand, which is the savings plan. And obviously we do need to have these conversations sooner rather than later. And we also need to sit down with the community when they have a chance to read this report. Not everyone in the community has, but once the community has had a chance to sit down and read this report, as I mentioned last night, probably more than once, we need to have a good, open, transparent, and honest discussion with all involved, which includes the police department as well. So, Chief, thank you, and every one of your officers, and the Assistant Chief Adele as well, for everything that you do for every day. And I can tell you, though you might not hear the thanks as much as you should, I hear from people that are very thankful. And of course, when you take somebody for granted, which is what we do, it shows what a fine job you do, because we expect it to be the right thing rather than anything other than that. But getting back to the topic at hand, is there any other comment on the reduction for the police department? And if not, then we're going to do that without objection. Okay, very good. Ms. Farag or others, is there anything else for this committee, please?
I just wanted to make sure it was clearly stated that the committee is recommending approval of all of these reductions except for the $100,000 in the faith-based grants moving forward, and that's 3-0.
That is correct.
Okay.
And we would have either one of the committee members jump up and down if that was not correct, but that is correct. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a jumping up and down. All right. Sounds good. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.